Hello, and welcome back to another installment of Leadership Live, where I host candid discussions with industry leaders on the intersection of business and technology. I'm Christine Middleton from Zoho for Enterprise, and joining me today is Anil Prasad, the VP of Technology and Engineering at Cloudmed. Anil has experience in leading large-scale transformation initiatives, specializing in product development, software engineering, data engineering, cybersecurity, and application security. Let's welcome him now. Thanks for joining me today, Anil. And to get started, I would love if you could tell us a little bit about your experience with today's topic.
Good morning, Christine. Hope you can hear me okay.
Yes.
All right, perfect. Yeah. So my name is Anil Prasad, and I'm currently a VP of software engineering with Cloudmed. Prior to that, I've been a CTO for a startup, and we led a product development for fintech industry, and I've also spent more than 8 years with a healthcare company like United Health Group and Medtronic. So currently, I manage the engineering organization for Cloudmed. So I'm happy to be here.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us and thank you for sharing. All right, so let's get into it. Starting off, since we're talking about application security and cybersecurity, how can you stay updated with the ever-evolving landscape of security vulnerabilities and exploits?
Yeah, it's a great question, Christine. I think one thing we all struggle to be informed about the latest threats we have, right? So a couple of
Right.
things one could look at is one is I subscribe to a security mailing list, for example,
Mm,
the common vulnerabilities and exposures (CVE) list that basically lists all the industry-wide vulnerabilities. And sometimes I also subscribe to a vendor-specific list where I receive timely updates on any vulnerabilities, DDoS attacks. That's one way. The second way is that I also subscribe to security news sources and blogs and things like Grips on Security, Threat Post, and Hacker News. So Hacker News gives you a latest list of what's happening in the industry across different sectors. And then I also attend conferences like DEF CON, RSA, and Black Hat. And then sometimes, my team uses a online vulnerability database, things
mhm,
like NVD, National Vulnerability Databases, to search for latest vulnerabilities and track down. And then we also engage across different professionals and in forums like Stack Overflow, Reddit's NetSec is a good one, uh,
mm,
and then a few other security community sites. And then networking with peers is important.
mhm.
We do that all the time with security professionals. Building that strong, cohesive network is important to stay up to date. Some of the other things is like Google Alerts, configure Google Alerts for specific keywords related to software and vulnerabilities to receive email. And then you could subscribe to RSS feeds,
Mm.
follow the RSS feeds from security related websites, follow social media, monitor social media, read security publications on security focus and CSO online. So that gives you more emerging threats and vulnerabilities. And then the last one I can think of is joining a bug bounty program, which is basically signing up for a bug bounty platform like HackerOne and Bug Crowd. So that gives you a latest updates on newly discovered vulnerabilities and security research. So these are some of the ways I can think for one to be up to date on the latest trends and emerging trends in security.
Right, absolutely. That's very insightful. Like, I did not know that there were lists that you can actually join. Are these lists like readily available? Like, can
Yeah,
anybody access them?
yeah, it's publicly available for
Okay.
anyone to subscribe, and yeah, I would encourage everyone to look at it. And I'm happy to share some details with you later, and you can share that with the audience. It's publicly, a public platform for everyone to join and subscribe.
Perfect. That sounds amazing. Thank you for that. Um, the next question is, what are the current trends in securing remote and distributed applications in the era of remote work and cloud computing?
Oh yeah, this is one of the things that comes up very often, not only from the enterprise and corporate compliance teams and legal teams, but also from our external customers who use our platform, and we also use their data for mining, right? So securing remote and distributed application in this current era of remote work and cloud computing is evolving and emerging. So it's important to note that the security landscape is constantly changing. But
Right.
some of the ways I can think of and we use is one is zero trust security. That's a
Hmm.
model we use here at Cloudmed. It's a fundamental shift in security strategy that assumes basically no trust across network and outside network. It
Okay.
emphasizes things like identity verification, having MFA, for example, when you
Right.
log in, having some kind of least privilege access to all the users, internal, external, and then continuously monitoring for any user events, security events, implementing zero trust models like Beyond Corp, uh,
Mm.
framework from Google that's gaining very high popularity, right? So that's something we look at. How could we leverage the framework like Beyond Corp from Google into our environment? The second part is around cloud native because we are a completely cloud native shop. So therefore, cloud native security is very important because all of the applications are hosted and running on cloud. So
Mm.
therefore, security measures have to be adapted to fit in the cloud native environment. So
Right.
we use technologies like CASIP, like cloud access security brokers. We also use cloud security posture management tools, and then we also use some serverless security solutions. So all this is available within native to the cloud. The third thing I can think of is very popular is SASE. It stands for Secure Access Service Edge.
Okay.
What it does is it combines the network security and the wide area networking aspects into a cloud native service, and it provides a holistic approach to secure monitoring remote and distributed applications. So that's another one we can look at. SASE, it stands for Secure Access Service Edge, and it's available within the cloud platform. Multi-factor authentication, as I called out, is another one. It's a very critical component for remote application security.
Yeah.
Then it verifies users and devices across different accessing different applications and data security. The other thing I can think of is endpoint security is something we use. We use things like endpoint detection and response. We use a tool called Rapid7 MDR, which gives you that capability to provide endpoint security. And then the identity access management is an important function. It manages the user identities and their access privileges across different assets within the enterprise. So that's an important function within the CISO. I mean, and latest trends I've seen, Christine, is like container orchestration security, threat intelligence, threat hunting. DevSecOps is important for developers to integrate security into DevOps. Data encryption at rest, in transit, in motion, in use is something very popular. Uh, Security awareness training is something is very important for enterprises to do. And then as we go, there is aspects like AI and machine learning security as workloads get into more AI and ML models. So that's another one we have to look at. Yeah. And lastly, the compliance and privacy requirements are important, like GDPR, HIPAA, CCPA, California, health protection. So those are very some of the ways we should be looking into it.
Right. No, absolutely. I'm sure that that's a very common concern for companies globally because ever since COVID, a lot of companies have taken either the fully remote or even like the hybrid models. And so you need to ensure, especially when you're working off of the cloud, that everybody is secure, all the employees and whatever is happening. I know that the usage of VPNs is also very highly in demand also, to make sure that applications are running secure and so on. So thank you so much for sharing your insight on that. To all of our attendees, if there are any questions that you would like to ask, please feel free to drop it there in the comment section. We'll be more than happy to answer your questions towards the end of our live stream. Moving on to the final question, Anil, is what are some real world examples of businesses that suffered due to weak digital defenses, and what lessons can be learned from their experiences?
Oh, wow, this is one of the favorite one for any CISO if you ask them. I'll start with the latest one. Everyone is aware, should be aware, is the MGM Resorts International.
Mhm.
There's a major global hospitality entertainment company.
Right.
Uh, so there was a classical social engineering attack that began with mining employee information on LinkedIn,
Mm.
then leveraging that data to pose as an employee with the support center and be able to bypass the complex MFA, multi-factor authentication, by issuing the one-time password. So that was a classical example of social engineering attack from MGM Resorts, right? So that's a very latest one that hit the news, uh,
Yeah.
and I think it was related to Okta and the identity provider, right? So that was one thing to look at, and then the company basically targeted to steal the personal data from more than 10.6 million users,
Mm.
uh, and then yeah, so that was a big one. Couple of other ones is that, I mean, if you talk about the mobile providers, AT&T vendor had a $9 million account hacking, and then T-Mobile had 37 million accounts. JD Sports had 10 million. My Deal had 2.2 million. Dropbox had about 69 million accounts which were hacked. So these are some of the examples. eBay had about 145 million users, account leaked. The information was leaked. A couple of other ones I can think of is the popular ones is the Cambridge Analytica scandal, the 2018 one from Facebook, where it was.
Mm.
We all know that it was came to the news, and Facebook ended up paying $5 billion fines. In terms of the data leakage, right? So
Right.
what happened was it was discovered that the political consulting firm Cambridge Analytica had obtained access to personal information of millions of Facebook users without their consent, and it was made possible by broken access control vulnerability in Facebook's application programming API interface
Mm.
that allowed the third-party developers to access user data. And this scandal brought into light some issues like data privacy, need to have more stricter access control measures to protect user data. And Facebook, faced widespread criticism for its role in the breach and was fined about $5 billion by U.S. Federal Trade
Oh,
Commission.
wow.
So that's another one I can see, and there are many more, but I'll keep it short for now.
Yeah. Understandable. I mean, there are so many preventative measures, but what happens, like, after a breach? Like, what would be the steps to damage control in those type of situations? What do you do? Do you just cash out, and pay for compensation, or what would be the next steps if, in the event of.
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes the fines are not unavoidable. Because they are faced by the regulation departments. You'll have to end up paying them. That's one thing you do. But
Mm.
the key thing you do is basically put a root cause analysis and try to see what gaps you have. That's one thing you can do as a damage control, and then also you that gives you liberty into looking into all of your assets and see how well they are protected,
Mm.
and who is accessing. Right, having some kind of a least privilege is important, and then external access is important, right? And then if you're exposing too much of sensitive information, that's something you can avoid by enforcing encryption, by making sure the sensitive information is not on the internet. So those are some of the things I would do. I would perform pen testing, for example, to make sure
Mhm.
that I'm not exposing too much of sensitive data in APIs. API seems to be another one where the hacking had the threat, the bad actors are able to penetrate into the org through API and then extract all the sensitive information. So API security is another one. Database security is another one. So pen testing gives me that visibility into what sort of gaps I have, and then I would use methods like encryption, TLS 1.2, or AES 256-bit encryption at rest. So yeah, I have to take some these measures to in order for me to avoid any future threats.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, like, when you realize that there is like a piece that's compromised, that kind of gives you the ability to go in and take a look at everything else that you have to see if everything is running smoothly or if things have to be checked and secured on those ends as well. Um, All right, so that brings us to the end of our session. Thank you so much, Anil, for your insights on this topic. It's a very prevalent issue for sure. We do have a question from Fabrice, so let me just put that up on the screen here. So Fabrice says, Anil, what should people be aware of in terms of the threats faced by using IoT, Internet of Things?
Yeah, that's. I've not worked a lot on IoT to be honest with you, but what I can speak is if I just leave alone the IoT page where I've not worked on much, right? So once you get the data into an environment, so that is where I can speak to, correct? So one is there is a constant process of intaking or ingesting data from these IoT devices, right? And once, so there's one way I would do is to start security from scratch or from the beginning. So when I'm ingesting data constantly or streaming data from IoT devices into my environment, I would make sure that the encryption is enabled when data is transmitted through the internet. So that's the first part I would do. And once data gets to my environment, then I would make sure that where the data is stored, it's encrypted at rest. And from that point, I would identify different access patterns across APIs or downstream processes which are accessing data, and then I would have defined security controls, for example, TLS 1.2 for APIs, and then least privilege or rollback access. And one thing I would do if somebody is accessing that information, I would enforce ABAC or RBAC. It's attribute based or role based access control. These are some of the measures I can think, but I can't speak much on the IoT device itself because I've not worked on that domain. But in the environment, how you manage data is the way I just mentioned. Hopefully that answered questions, Fabrice.
Yes, Fabrice did comment saying at rest and in transit, definitely. All right, so I'll leave the chat open for a little while longer. If in case there are any other questions that anybody has, please feel free to drop them in here. We're more than happy to answer them for you. Um, all right. In the meantime, I do want to thank everybody for joining us today. It was definitely an informative discussion that we had. And I also do want to announce that next month, on November 28th, we're going to be having Joe Gullo, who is the global director at McAfee, joining us. So that's definitely going to be an interesting discussion as well. It's also going to be our final Leadership Live of this year until we reconvene next year. You don't want to miss it, so please feel free to join us. We'll be posting updates on our enterprise page on LinkedIn, as well as on other social media platforms like Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. If there are no other questions, that brings us to the end of today's live stream. So thank you once again for joining us. Thank you, Anil, once again. And we will see all of you in the next one. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. My pleasure. Thank you.
Bye-bye.